How's it going? I messed up the first line. Happy afternoon, good. I don't know. Good to see you. I'm Grant Cohn. We're all 49ers. That's Jackhammer. That's Maverick Pallack. We were supposed to have Leo Lunar today, but he can't come. But he made this sweet little background for us. So thank you, Leo, if you're watching. We're going to get into the Niners matchup with Washington heavily. But there's breaking news. Richard Sherman just had a press conference with the Niners and just laid out exactly why he's not coming back next season. There's been reports, and now he says there's really, unless there's a miracle, the Niners have 40 free agents, less than $30 million in cap space, and they're going to have to give $20+ million to Trent Williams and $18+ million to Fred Warner per season. It's very specific what he said. So he's gone. And my question to you guys is, how do the Niners replace him next year? What do you think the plan is? What should the plan be?
I would say the plan would simply be, you can't really determine it until you know who the defensive coordinator is, for one, because if Robert Saleh is leaving for a head coach job, it could be anyone between Raheem Morris or Dan Quinn or whoever they end up hiring. And I think that they'll bring over some guys that know their defense more familiar. So that'd be one way to replace Sherman to that degree. But I think Sherman might be priced out, like you said, with the contract situation. So it's anyone's guess what they end up doing. But they should re-sign Mosley.
Yeah, they should have Mosley. I think they might have him as a restricted free agent going into this offseason. So that's step one. And then it depends on what happens with Verrett as well. If they can get him back, what his cost is going to be. But beyond that, and I kind of mentioned that in the piece that I wrote this morning, is that they should be looking to go cornerback in round one. There's a couple of good prospects right there in Caleb Farley out of Virginia Tech, and also Patrick Surtain, the second out of Alabama. The guy out of Alabama could have been the reason why they were out there in the first place instead of Mac Jones. So that's the direction that I would go.
I like J.C. Horn at South Carolina, Joe Horn's son. But there's a lot of good options, and they're all big. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it seems to me that Richard Sherman knows he's no dummy. He's gone. Not just because they can't afford him. I don't think they need him or want him anymore. It's great that they have him now because Mosley's hurt. He has a hamstring injury, and I don't know if he's going to be back this week, but Mosley has a future. Mosley can play man coverage. He's more of a priority this offseason than Sherman. Verrett's more of a priority this offseason than Sherman. I'd like to think that the Niners would spend a first-round pick on a cornerback. They do have other needs, and they've made it pretty clear that philosophically they don't like spending first-round picks on corners. They're going to spend it on defensive tackles and linemen every freaking year if it's a defensive player. So I don't know if they're going to go that route. I think they want to tell themselves, Nick Bosa comes back. We get a replacement for D Ford, Javon Kinlaw. It improves. Eric Armstead's here. Mosley and Verrett should be good enough if we're playing good, sound defense with 7 in coverage. I think that's going to be what happens, which is scary. But they do have to get someone in here because everyone else is gone. Witherspoon, everyone is gone. So it's like, which round do they draft one?
Yeah.
Probably, if I had to guess, it depends on the coordinator. But if it's Saleh, probably no earlier than round 3, which is really exciting.
Well, I think it's pretty certain that it's going to be a coordinator that's going to be running a similar type of scheme. There's a lot of them that are out there right now that are coming up. And Shanahan likes it, so I think that's what we're going to see them do regardless. And
it's basically the difference between aggressive and conservative. It's very conservative. You rush with 4, you drop 7. You don't create opportunities for big plays for the offense. You make them work. And that's what Shanahan wants when he says it's a very sound defense. That's code for conservative. Aggressive would be blitzing, bringing extra guys because you have amazing corners. And it's more what Belichick and Flores and that school of defense, what Baltimore does. That's what Baltimore does. Yeah. All right, let's stick with the draft real quick before we get to some quarterbacks and then talk about the game coming up. Since we alluded to the corners in round 1, next question, is there any scenario in which the 49ers do not draft a quarterback in round 1 next year? Jack, why don't you start this time?
Well, I think it's really highly likely, especially depending on where they end up. If they're outside of the top 15, all the top guys are probably going to be gone at that point. So with all their needs, the 49ers going into this offseason, they're going to have a lot of needs. Quarterback is really, I know quarterback's extremely important in the NFL, but when you look at what the 49ers are going to need going into this offseason, I think they need to be looking elsewhere because I think they can make do with a couple of one guy that they have on the roster currently and some of the free agents that are out there.
Yeah, I definitely could see a situation where they don't go quarterback because I think they, unless there's a guy at quarterback that they hands down want, I don't really want to settle with whoever is the top guy available at 15 or wherever they end up. If there is the Zach Wilson falls further than they thought, Justin Fields, Trey Lance falls further than they thought, I definitely can see that scenario where they move up 4 spots to go grab them. But if they stick where they are, I think cornerback, offensive line, they love defensive ends, edge rushers in the first round. So who knows what they do. But I think there's a lot of talent and they got to go best available if that quarterback they love isn't there.
Yeah, I think the scenario where they don't take a quarterback is the scenario where they win a couple more games and finish with like the 15th pick or something like that. Because the way I look at it, the first 2 picks are quarterbacks, and then Carolina is going to be around the 7th pick. They're going to take a quarterback. That's 3 in the top 7. And then Atlanta after them could take a quarterback. There's a high likelihood that 4 guys go in the top 10, I think. And if the Niners find themselves at 12, do you just take a guy at 12 because you need a quarterback? What if he's not worth the 12th pick in the draft? What if there's an offensive lineman who could replace Mike McFloppy at right tackle or Colton McFlops-a-lot at right guard? Maybe you could get someone better there and actually give Nick Mullens a real chance to succeed, or Jimmy Garoppolo or whoever, Mitchell Trubisky, Ryan Fitzpatrick, doesn't freaking matter. The Niners have a really good team. They just have a really awful offensive line that got Jimmy Garoppolo hurt. Who knows what's going to happen the next 4 games of the career? I worry for Nick Mullens. So yeah, I think you could argue that what's the use in bringing in Mac Jones or Kyle Trask, 2 guys who aren't any more mobile than the guys the Niners already have, don't know the system, can't play right away. How does that help? Maybe you're best off building up the offensive line and taking a quarterback next year. Of course, if Trey Lance falls, go for it. If you think you can turn him into Steve Young, go for it. But there's no way Kyle Trask is going to be Steve Young. There's no way. So he might be Peyton Manning, but probably not.
Yeah, so there's definitely some things that they're going to need to do there. We'll know more once the free agency period hits. By the time draft comes around, we're going to know a little bit of the direction they're going there, I think.
I'm sorry to bring up these questions in December. It's just that Niner fans get really down after a loss and want to think about 4 months ahead, even though they're not mathematically eliminated. I think they're a little spoiled from last season. Last season was easy. So now it's like, well, you know what? What?
They're all the questions that are on everybody's mind. That's
exactly.
It's
fair enough.
It's important to talk about them.
Let's go for it. All right, let's stick with the quarterback. Is Matthew Stafford the 49ers' ideal target this offseason? I ask this because his name's been thrown around a little bit. Steve Young mentioned him. A lot of guys saying he'd be perfect for really the 49ers. His contract is cheaper for the Niners than for the Lions if they get rid of him, if they trade. And I was just watching him last night because I was trying to take a look at Trubisky, and we'll talk about him later. But Matthew Stafford, my goodness, he is definitely in his prime right now. Never been better than what he is right now. So yeah, that's the backdrop. Is he the ideal target, all things considered?
I think Stafford would be great in this offense, but I don't see. I think Jack's going to say something similar. The realness of Stafford being traded over to the 49ers, just because before the season, the Lions ownership told Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn that they had to win this year. They had a good roster. They needed to make the playoffs this year. Once it was pretty much a lock, they weren't going to make the playoffs. They fired those 2 guys. I'm not sure of the possibility of who they hired. They don't want to win right away. And if there is that pressure on the new coach to win right away, you don't necessarily want to trade your veteran quarterback that knows the system and knows everything to draft a quarterback. But if it is a guy that they're telling they can have a lot of time to rebuild, like Zach Taylor in Cincinnati, then maybe you do move on from Stafford in that sense. But I just don't think Stafford gets traded if they have the same pressure that Matt Patricia did this year.
I would absolutely love to have Matthew Stafford on the 49ers. I think he'd be a tremendous pickup. And I get why everybody's going, he's really, everybody in 49er Nation is all over this guy. And of course, he'd be great to have on the roster next year. I just don't see it happening. I don't see why Detroit would want to move on from him. That doesn't make sense, especially with a new coach coming in, why a new coach would want to take that job if they're going to be getting rid of the franchise quarterback. And on the other side too, his contract is going to be in the neighborhood about $20 million for next year. Which is a little bit less than what you're spending on Garoppolo. But at the same time, who are you going to get rid of in order to bring him in? Are you
left tackle?
Are we rolling with Sean Coleman at left tackle next year? So those are the things to really think about.
Yeah, Matt Stafford's good, but he's not He's not Steve Young. I mean, he would struggle behind this offensive line as well. I do think that he might be the ideal target in the sense that he's really freaking good. He's in his prime. He's probably worth the money that the Niners would have to pay him. And I kind of look at him when I see like a little bit of like, we keep throwing John Elway out there. I see John Elway career trajectory in the sense that kind of on a middling team for a long time, held him back. Numbers aren't great, but at the end, in his mid-30s, if someone could just give this guy a freaking run game and a play action game, he could have an MVP season late, like and win a Super Bowl like John Elway. But again, why would they trade him? I mean, I guess if they could trade him straight up for like the 5th pick in the draft and take, whichever young quarterback say they love some quarterback and they want to have a young guy who's cheaper and get picks for Stafford, great. But the Niners can't offer that. They can't offer a top 10 pick. I just don't see why the Lions would trade Stafford for a mid pick. Because you'd have to use that to take a quarterback. They don't have anyone they've been developing. You're going to trade Stafford for what? Kyle Trask? Not going to happen. So maybe they would trade Matthew Stafford, but it would be for like 3 first-round picks. It would be for a huge haul. It wouldn't be for whatever the Niners could give him. So keep dreaming.
Yeah, and on top of that, Stafford's good, but what happens if you bring him into this system, into this organization with all the guys that are going to have to leave? You're turning the 49ers into the Lions. Look at the reason why the Lions have been where they are. It's not because they have a really good quarterback. They just don't have the ability to get the guys around them. You bring him to the 49ers, and you're looking at kind of a similar situation. You got to remember, there's no secondary next year.
That's true. There's no secondary. Now, the one thing is, on the Lions, they gave him like this $70 million signing bonus, and that's prorated through the contract. So he's about $10 million more per season. $10 million more expensive per season for them than for the Niners. But still, when the cap goes down next year, $20 million is going to be about 13%. You're pushing it right there. You're pushing it. And if you could get similar production, you're not going to get similar talent because he's extremely talented. But if he's not going to put up demonstrably better numbers than someone who you could pay $2 million, $3 million, then why are you doing this? What's the point? Especially when you have no secondary and no offensive line.
Yeah.
So good point. I mean, it's an interesting topic. Vish says Stafford has a player option. What if he wants out? Well, that would tank his value, and then maybe the Niners can get him for a 3rd-round pick. But then still, you got to worry about, okay, great. You got Matt Stafford. You didn't give up a 1st-round pick, but you got no offensive line, no secondary. What's the plan there? Maybe they could do it. Maybe not. That's where Parag Marath would have to get.
Yeah, there would be one other thing too, and this is kind of a little bit of a funny comment, but I think it'd really be funny based on some of the things that Stafford's wife has been saying on social media in the last month or so to see them come to California.
Good point.
If she thinks it's so bad in Michigan, bring her out to California.
Yeah, she acts like she lives in the USSR, right?
Yeah,
that's her. She keeps going on rants about how there's no freedom anymore, no liberty. Hey, she's gonna have to go to the whatever sensitivity training class Nick Bosa went to. I really like San Francisco. No, I was
just with Stafford, I just feel like if he was a free agent, I think there'd be a lot of teams interested in him, and I don't know if the 49ers necessarily would be his top choice. If they gave him the most money, he would probably take that. But if Dallas trades Dak Prescott, he might want to go play for his hometown team, that type of situation. Like, you never know with Stafford. I think there'd be a lot of teams wanting to win now interested. What about New England? New England would definitely be interested too, in my opinion.
Hell yeah. I mean, what team wouldn't be interested? I really think he has Hall of Fame level talent. And if someone could just put a freaking run game around. And the thing about a run game is it's not expensive. You can get undrafted guys. It's a lot about your scheme and your offensive coordinator. It's what Mike did for John Elway. It's what he did for Steve Young. You think someone could do it for Stafford, but it's probably going to be me and Robert Saleh next year. Probably going to be the two of us because he's already promised that I could be the offensive coordinator for the Lions. I'm extremely qualified. So I think I'm going to hold on to Stafford and see what I can do. Let's move on. Okay. All right. Let's talk Trubisky. So the reason I was watching Stafford last night is I wanted to watch Trubisky because I have a theory that he could be the next Ryan Tannehill. And he played last weekend, not Tannehill, of course, Trubisky, and he lost. And he put up decent numbers. I want to see what it looked like. And my takeaway was, wow, Matthew Stafford, hell of a player. So my question to you guys is Mitchell Trubisky worthless? Is he worth a flyer, or should the Niners just not waste their time?
Mitchell Trubisky to me is Jimmy Garoppolo, cheaper. If you look at what he doesn't have, he doesn't throw the ball down the field accurate, with any kind of success when you compare the two. And saying that when you're talking about Garoppolo and somebody doing worse than him when it comes to the ball down 15 pass, that's saying a lot.
Okay.
So I think if they could bring him in for a $4 to $5 million deal and have him compete with Mullens for the starting job while they groom the rookie to take over his place, go for it. I think he could step in and do a good job.
I don't know if I'm in the minority. I probably am in the minority on this podcast, but maybe not overall, of saying I wouldn't touch Trubisky unless it's a vet min.
Okay.
I'd much rather go after Tyrod Taylor. I'd much rather go after Jacoby Brissett, who might be in that similar $4 million range. I think they just offer more than Trubisky. I'm not sure he commands a locker room, commands an offense. Obviously, he'd be brought in as a backup, so it's not like he necessarily has to do that from day one. But I just think Tannehill had more history of success, even at Texas A&M and with Miami before that injury, than Trubisky ever has. That one season was good when he had a better offensive line, when he had a great defense. I'm just not a Trubisky guy, so it'll be hard to convince me of that. I could be wrong. Trubisky could turn it around like Tannehill has, but I just don't see Trubisky having that type of turnaround.
Well, the reason I compare him to Tannehill is the numbers. Like, I don't know about the records. Trubisky did have a one successful season, but just the passing numbers, Trubisky's been there like 4 years. Tannehill was in Miami 5 or 6. They have like the same quarterback rating. Like the same quarterback rating, the same completion percentage, the same almost yards per attempt, although Trubisky yards per rush. Trubisky averages almost 6 yards a carry. Tannehill was at 5. The reason I'm intrigued with Trubisky, one, he's dirt cheap. He's on the discard pile. 2, I do think he's probably the most physically gifted of the young discarded quarterbacks are going to be out there. He really is mobile. And Jimmy really isn't. So the comparison between Trubisky and Jimmy are as passers. Trubisky has this whole element of his legs that they don't really use in Chicago. I hate that offense. In this offense, he would be a real threat rolling out. He could be able to scramble. He would give the Niners a different element that they don't have. And again, Stafford could do that. Wentz could do that, although Trubisky's faster than them. And again, Trubisky's way cheaper than them. He still has something to prove. I don't know if his confidence is shot, but I've seen quarterbacks have their confidence revived. I mean, we saw Jim Harbaugh help Alex Smith with that. I kind of compare Trubisky a little bit to Alex Smith. Now, Alex Smith is brilliant. Ryan Tannehill's extremely smart. Maybe Trubisky just isn't smart enough. Maybe he doesn't have the football IQ. But I actually thought he played pretty well against the Lions. He really is athletic. I don't know what's up with his accuracy down the field because he completed 70% of his passes at North Carolina and was not thinking and dunking. He's a strong arm. I really would like to see what he could do. Like the Baker Mayfield effect, what's happening with him in Cleveland, I'd like to see if the same thing could happen with Mitchell Trubisky because Baker looked awful last year in a similar scheme.
The one thing about Trubisky, though, it might bring flashbacks for the 49ers. His bad Sun Bowl game is the reason why I think the Niners got Solomon Thomas because Solomon Thomas kept getting him. So who knows if you want that memory back in here.
That's true.
Yeah, and I agree partly with what you're saying, Grant, too, is if you look at what Trubisky did in Chicago so far and you compare it, like you said, to Miami, almost everything's the same. The interception percentage, complete touchdown percentage, if you run it all the way out, they're really similar. So, there could be something there.
The same crap from Matt Nagy to Adam Gase. I mean, the same excuses.
Well, and the other thing about Trubisky is if Trubisky was a second-round pick, people would love him. The reason they don't like him is because where he was taken.
Exactly.
Because the only time he's had a losing season was his rookie season when they were 4-8. The next year they were 11-3 with him, 8-7 the year after that, and 3-2. He's won consistently, not at a high level. If in his second year, if the field goal kicker just puts the ball through the uprights, they win. They beat the Eagles in the wild card game.
See, to me, he's a lot like Alex Smith. He's falling short of expectations, but he's not as bad as people make him out to be. He basically has a winning record. He's mobile. He's toolsy. He's athletic. There's a reason he was the number 3 pick in the draft. Just like there was a reason Alex Smith was the number 1 pick in the draft, even though he wouldn't be that if he did it over again. So I'm fully in favor of spending $5 million of Jed York's money on Mitchell Trubisky. Jed, go for it. You got my stamp of approval. Nothing could go wrong. Hey, you gave $17 million to D Ford. What worse could happen? All right. Who is the Niners?
Tyrod Taylor.
Tyrod Taylor's cool too. The only thing is Tyrod Taylor's like what, 34, 35? How old is Tyrod? I like Tyrod though. Virginia Tech. I remember he lost to Jim Harbaugh in the Orange Bowl and Andrew Luck, right? That was the game that really wrote Harbaugh's ticket, if I remember correctly. Who is the 49ers' worst starter right now? Right now, meaning the backups who are in there, all of them are in the same boat with the guys who've always been starters.
Whoever starts at right guard any given week, in my opinion, I just think no matter what, that player opposition of him is in for a good day, whether it be run stopping or sacks or pass deflections.
Yeah, that's one of the directions I was going to go, where you can go over to the other side of the ball and you can look at the guy that's playing slot corner, whoever it is, on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Moore, he came out and he played really well when he first started playing, but he's really started to struggle. So there's a few guys that are in there. You throw in Armstead as well, and there's no 17 million. It just is way too much for a guy that needs so much help. And Robert Saleh even kind of said it in a roundabout way today.
Yeah. At least Armstead's is like good against the run, and for McKivitz, like at least he's just a rookie. And for Tavarius Moore, like he's not supposed to be a starter, but those are all really good choices. And Tavarius Moore might be the one right now. He's missing too many assignments. He's killing the Niners defense. He cost them 14 points in the last game. But Mike McGlinchey, he might not be as bad as McKivitz, but he's right there. It's neck and neck. I mean, they really are the McFloppy twins for a reason, the McSoft twins for a reason. And the bleak thing about McGlinchey is he's not going anywhere. I mean, they can not pick up his fifth-year option, but who's the replacement? Maybe Daniel Brunskill's a better right tackle than him right now. Maybe not, though. He was the 9th pick in the draft. The Niners got to take a corner in round 1 or a quarterback. They could have taken an offensive tackle this year, but they took Kinlaw instead. It seems like he's sticking around for a while, and that's really bad news for the recruitment process of Matthew Stafford or whoever you're trying to bring in, Drew Brees, whoever it may be, Matt Ryan, Trey Lance. I mean, gosh, imagine getting drafted by the 49ers and you're really excited and then it dawns on you. Oh my God, Mike McGlinchey's on that team. Isn't he? Oh, he's the guy who looks like a tight end. All right, well, I think he's in the running. Mike, you are the weakest link. Work on that.
The one thing about McKivitz, though, and Compton, whoever's starting at right guard, is that they have me debating on if Tony Bergstrom, who I don't think has been good anywhere he goes, if he's the better option at right guard. And
he's on the practice squad, right?
I think they just elevated him this week. I'm not sure, but
Reggie McKenzie drafted him, right, with the Raiders. Yeah. Woo! One of his legendary drafts. Yeah. What is the 49ers' biggest reason for optimism against Washington?
I think really the biggest reason for optimism is their defense should be able to hold Washington under 24 points.
Why do you feel that way?
Just because if you look at their offense with Smith, that's right around the area that they're hitting on a regular basis. You throw out a couple of long runs at the end of the game against Dallas, and that's where they are. They're right around 20 to 23 points a game. Outside of that, I think they had 27-1. Okay. So I think that gives them a little bit of shot there. Well, trying to stay on the positive side, I think that's the positive.
Yeah.
I would go with Washington's offensive line is injured right now, especially at left tackle. They're starting backup Cornelius Lucas. And then Alex Smith has been sacked a lot this season, 18 times in 6 games. A lot of that was Aaron Donald in that one game. But he has a 2.64 time to throw. That's middle of the pack, but I think it can be improved, and especially since he's lost his mobility. I think Kerry Hyder could have a big game against Lucas.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, well, I'm going with K'Wan Williams. It looks like, or put it this way, the fact that the Niners won't have to play Dante Johnson in this game. Robert Saleh is great as long as he doesn't have to play Dante Johnson, Akello Witherspoon, Greg Mabin, or Brian Allen. As long as he doesn't have to play total freaking stiffs Dante. Total freaking stiffs at cornerback. I think he's basically got this defense on lock, and they don't give up more than 20 points. Dante Johnson should be out. K'Wan Williams should be back. And at least he shouldn't miss assignments from cover 3 zone because he's been playing it for years. So I think the defense should be sounder, more soundish. So that's good. Because I thought Dante Johnson was killing him as well in subtle ways.
Sound leader.
So subtle. How do the 49ers match up with Alex Smith? Jack, you alluded to it. But let's dig into it. The Niners have struggled against guys like Carson Wentz, Josh Allen, and they've dominated guys like Drew Brees, Jared Goff. Where does Alex Smith fit into the spectrum? How do the Niners match up?
Smith is really good, and really the whole thing with Washington coming on in the last few weeks has been that change with where the Redskins finally realized who their best quarterback was by default. They didn't have any other choice. The one thing with Smith though is if you can hold him and force him into third down, especially third and long, that's where you're going to have some success with him. He is a check down guy. He's not going to take those risks. On third downs, I was looking at it. On 3rd and 7 or longer, that's really where he struggles the most. That's where he's had both of his interceptions on third down so far, is in a little bit 3rd and longer. So if they can do a good job against the run, which they usually do, and force Smith into 3rd and 7 plus, that's really going to benefit their defense on Smith.
Touching on the run game, at least, is without Antonio Gibson, who probably won't play. He injured his toe in their last game. They have Peyton Barber and J.D. McKissick as the running backs, and they're both – it's pretty easy to understand what they're going to do on each one. Peyton Barber is a between-the-tackles guy. He was their goal line back to start. So you pretty much know they're going to run or use him as a pass blocker in that situation, where J.D. McKissick is Alex Smith's favorite check-down receiver, and I think that's where the Niners have the advantages because I think Fred Warner and Jimmy Ward can handle the running back coming out of the backfield in that sense. And then that's where, once again, where I touch on their offensive line is weak. Kerry Hyder Jr., I think, can get him. The Niners struggle with mobile quarterbacks. I know the debate this week has been on what a mobile quarterback compared to a running quarterback is. Alex Smith was both before the injury. He is neither now. He has a lot of trouble running. He can escape the pressure every now and then. But I think the defensive linemen that actually have played well this year can handle him.
Yeah. It's interesting. Jack is right on. I posted that tweet, that stat about the third down thing with Alex Smith. His numbers on third down are no good. Obviously, the further back he gets, the worse they get. So if the Niners can win on 1st and 2nd down defensively, then they can win this game because he's trying to avoid third down. The thing about Alex Smith is he really does a good job of staying ahead of the chains, like not having negative plays, getting at least 4 yards of play. He's kind of like Drew Brees in that sense. And of course, Drew Brees is much better at it. But the difference between them is that while Drew Brees stays ahead of the chains with quick decision-making and accurate passes, Alex Smith can do it with that or with his legs. I know you say he's not as mobile as he used to be, but he's more mobile than Brees. He's more mobile than Goff. He can escape the pocket if Eric freaking Armstead rushes in with no discipline and gives up the edge like he always does. I mean, Alex Smith absolutely can escape the pocket to his right and make throws on the run. I see him do it. So the Niners have to be extremely disciplined and stopping him and this offense from consistently picking up 4 or 5 yards of play isn't going to be as easy as it sounds. It's going to be a challenge. The Niners can do it, but they're going to have to not make the stupid mistakes they made last game where Eric Armstead just runs in, runs past the quarterback or lunges at the quarterback or things like that. They actually have to not make a bunch of mistakes. They can't let Contavious Street had the hit on the sideline that led to the 15-yard penalty on 2nd and 18. That wouldn't have happened if Eric Armstead had just kept dude in pocket. So that's what I'm looking for. Eric, hold on. Next question. I'm done with Eric. I don't want to talk about him anymore. How do the 49ers match up with Washington's receivers? Terry McLaurin is one of the top receivers in the league, and their number 2 guy I never heard of until last week. His name is what? Cam Sims. He had 90-something yards. He's a big dude. Maverick, how tell me. How do the Niners match up here?
There will be a lot of it in my players to watch, which will hopefully come out tomorrow. And Cam Sims is 6'5", and he runs a 4.59 40. Oh. That's I was telling you pre-show. Bootleg DK Metcalf. He doesn't have the speed or obviously the exact level of talent as DK Metcalf, but he has the physicalness. He's 6'5". That's hard to guard. It's hard for me to believe that Verrett would be on him man-to-man. So that leaves your tallest corner, which I guess is Richard Sherman, is 6'3". And so that would make it Verrett on McLaurin and Sherman on Cam Sims. I don't know if the 49ers have as much versatility of being able to flip their defense around, at least in man coverage, because if it's a 5'10 corner and Verrett on 6'5 Cam Sims, that's not a good matchup.
No, you're right.
I'm a pretty short person, so anytime someone's that tall, like when I would play sports, like that's a bad disadvantage. Like I know the disadvantage. Like it's not.
I've lived the disadvantage. Yeah. I felt it.
Verrett's 5'10". He's shorter than 6'5". And then, like you said, McLaurin is probably the most underrated player from that last year's draft. He might be the best receiver from the 2019 draft. I know people like to say DK Metcalf, but I love Terry McLaurin. I think he's going to be a big problem.
Jack, what do you think? Oh, Jack's he's in and out. He's coming back though. Oh, he's gone. It's all right. While Jack is thinking about it, he's getting the answers from his sources. All right, see, now he just got the answers. That's not fair. Jack's cheating. Who told you the answers, Jack?
What's that?
Who told you the answer just now?
I was cheating. Well, one of my kids decided he had to help me out. So
okay, right.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be interesting. I think kind of what we talked about the stuff with Smith. I think that's how the 49ers are going to be able to match up with these receivers. McLaurin's really good.
Yeah,
he's a really, really good receiver. And the other thing to look for is they're pretty good with the tight end as well. That's really he's been making some good plays with Smith in there too. So it's really a matter of just needing to get after the quarterback. That's really how they're going to be able to defend the pass this week. I really think is they're going to have to get after Smith and make him move.
Absolutely. It's interesting that Cam Sims runs a 4.59. He's big. Theoretically, Richard Sherman should be able to cover him. Richard Sherman's 6'3". He runs about a 4.9, maybe a 5 flat. If Richard Sherman has anything left, he should be able to cover Cam Sims, I think. And then let's see what Jason Verrett can do against Terry McLaurin. I don't have much hope for him. I mean, Verrett's pretty good given all he's been through and his age, but Stephon Diggs worked him in the last game, and Terry McLaurin's pretty much Stephon Diggs with a little bit more juice. So yeah, I think Jack's right on the money on that one. This is going to have to be like an Eric Armstead production. Although, why would you even expect that or hope for that? That ship has sailed. Maybe Javon Kinlaw, although probably not. No, Kerry Hyder. Kerry Hyder and Kevin Gibbons going to have big game. Have to.
Well, Kevin Gibbons big game. Playing.
That's too bad. Well, that's right. Yeah, you're right. What does he have? A son?
Yeah,
daughter?
He had to have a kid in the middle of the season.
What would Glenn Dickey say about Kevin Gibbons right now?
Bad planning.
Bad planning. That's the most outrageous thing any columnist has ever said. Of all, how did you? God, I almost got to give him the hat tip for that, for just going there. A lot of people think my dad said that. No, that was Glenn. That was money. Legendary.
Well, we need a big game from Kerry Hyder and from Javon Kinlaw. Kinlaw's been getting a little bit better, so it's time.
Yes, it's time. How does Nick Mullens match up with Washington's defense? Real quick, if you don't know about Washington defense, it's a lot like the Niners defense from last year. Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, with Ryan Kerrigan coming. It's really a good defensive line. They drop 7 into coverage, and they say good luck. So how does Nick Mullens match up with this?
It's going to be rough because that's their strength on weakness right there. The Niners are going to have a rough time. So, I was looking at some stuff on the Redskins and I mean, they're top 10 in pretty much every category that you can think of on the defensive side across the board. I think one of the worst things was on their completion percentage. They're at about 12.5. So the thing here is if they can give Mullens time, I think he's going to be able to find some success. It's just a matter of being able to give him that time though, because it's like you said, it's a really good defense. Top 5 in yards per play all across the board. So if I'm Kyle Shanahan game planning on this one, I'm looking at kind of what the 49ers did against the Rams, maybe not the jet sweep stuff, but the little screen pass that they threw to Kittle, that kind of thing. You got to slow down that pass rush to open up things as you go through the game.
Yeah. The nice thing real quick, Maverick, the nice thing about throwing those screens, it's what Arizona, it's what Cliff Kingsbury does. You get the pass rush chasing sideline to sideline, left and right. And by the third quarter, theoretically, they might be a little more tired. Maverick, what do you think?
I think Washington had an advantage of playing Pittsburgh last week, although they're not that similar in offenses in terms of personnel. Pittsburgh does get the ball out really quickly. Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, they get in like 3 nanoseconds, right?
Yeah. He leads the league in getting rid of the ball. He throws quick passes. And Montez Sweat is the player I think is going to have the best game. He lines up on both sides of the line. But against Cincinnati, he was over right tackle a lot, and he got a sack that way. And I said last week with Jerry Hughes, going over right tackle. That would be a big game for him. He didn't really get the numbers I thought he was going to do, but I think Montez Sweat is definitely going to make an impact. Last week against Pittsburgh, he didn't have any sacks, but he had a TFL and 3 pass deflections. That's pretty big for a defensive end to get 3 swatted passes. So I think he could have a really good game over McGlinchey.
Yeah, I don't think Nick Mullens matches up particularly well with Washington's defense. Like, Washington puts you in a position where even if they don't get to you, they're in your face, and you have to make snap throws off your back foot. That's not his game. He does much better when he steps into his throws. He's going to have to escape the pocket a lot. He's been doing that recently. He's going to have to make a lot of throws on the run. He's going to have to get rid of the ball extremely quickly. He's going to have to be in the shotgun a lot. It's going to be a very, very difficult game for him. And the numbers might not be pretty. He may win, but the numbers may not be pretty. This is not the matchup. What Nick Mullens, when he goes against a team with like a mediocre pass rush or not so good of a pass rush, all of a sudden he turns into Kurt Warner. But when there's a rush in his face, then you can really see the limitations that he wears on his sleeve. So
Kurt Warner?
I mean, he can sling it down the field. He has some big, he can put up numbers when there's like time and space. But when there isn't, all of a sudden you could get the Philly game. So this defensive line is better than the Philly defensive line. So I'm curious to see how Kyle Shanahan protects Mike McGlinchey, Colton McFloppy, and Nick Mullens. Final question.
Real quick on that one, Grant. You're talking about the defensive line. The Redskins are ahead of New Orleans, who dominated the 49ers up front. They're ahead of the Rams, and they're ahead of Green Bay. The only team that the Niners have played that they're behind is Philadelphia, and we saw them, the 49ers struggle against Philadelphia as well.
See, it's a bad matchup. It's a bad matchup for the whole offense, but for Nick, this could be ugly. So Kyle really has to protect him. And now let's get into the final question. Nope, that's not it. Who needs to have a big game for the 49ers to win?
I mean, everyone, we've been saying how they hold a disadvantage for the 49ers need to have big games. They need Mike McGlinchey to have his best game of the season. Otherwise, take that for what it's worth, but they need Sweat and to stop Sweat and Chase Young in that sense. They need McKivitz or whoever plays right guard to have a big game. But
McKivitz or whoever the hell that is. Yeah, you're right. Keep going.
But I think they need to run the ball. So whether that's Jeff Wilson Jr. or Raheem Mostert, I know Washington has a really good run defense, but they need to figure out a way to move the chains because I think Mullens is going to have a tough time in this game. And I think the best way to do that is by running the ball. So I would say Wilson and Mostert.
Jack is thinking long and hard, or he's frozen. Ooh, it's hard. It's impossible to know because it's such a good question. He could be stumped.
It's because Leo's not on, so Jack got the Leo.
Yeah, no, he's just deep in thought. All right, well, I'm gonna kick Jack Hammer out of here, and if he comes back, he comes back. I think he'll come back. But in the meantime, in between time, let's talk. So the question here is, who needs to have a big game for the Niners to win? I think it's real clear. I think it's Deebo Samuel. To me, when he has a big game, the Niners win. When he somehow is phased out or injured or whatever, they lose. He is training wheels. He is training wheels personified for any quarterback. And I'm not sure that the run game is going to work, Maverick, because it's a hell of a front, hell of a D line. Oh, he's back. I'm going to finish though, and then Jack can come in after me because I'm rolling right now. So hold on. I'm saying it's got to be Deebo Samuel because great defensive line. Wilson and Mostert is going to be tough for them to go into the teeth of that defense. Brandon Ayuk, hell of a player. Mullens not going to have time to get the ball down the field in this game. The Niners' best play in this game is going to be screen right to Deebo, screen left to Deebo. They got to run that play 4, 5, 6 times and let him break as many tackles as possible. That's their running game.
So do you think it's like the LA game?
Sure, I mean, whatever. Whether it's jet sweeps, end around, screens, just get the ball in his hands and let him do his thing because the Niners didn't do that enough against the Bills. He didn't really become a factor in the game until it was over, and that's, to me, inexcusable. They can never, ever let that happen again. It's too easy to get him involved. Way too easy. Screens, play him on special teams. He has an amazing effect on this team. He is, to me, a Pro Bowl level player, and as long as he is involved and not injured, the Niners can beat anyone. He is the one that gives them the time of possession, that keeps the ball on their side, whatever. Debo, Jack.
I agree with that. And what you just said is really kind of along the way that I'm thinking too, as far as when I'm saying screens or some like the tight end, but really those little things where they have them, where you can get away from having the defensive line knocking it down is when they're running the ones out. Yeah, the swing kind of a screen where the wide receiver screen where he's moving, it almost becomes a sweep at that point.
Yes,
those kind of plays, maybe a jet sweep here and there.
Yes.
They really got to get him going. I think if they get him moving, I think like we talked about yesterday on the game film breakdown, that opens up the running lanes behind him. So they really need to make the Redskins focus on him.
To me, he is the new George Kittle in the sense that he's the guy who brings the offense to the red zone. And it makes it so easy. It's just put it in his hands and he'll break 8,000 tackles and get you to the 9. Now, Deebo Samuel may not score, but he'll get you to the 9. And then, Ross Dwelly, Kendrick Bourne, Kyle Shanahan can figure something out. It's like playing Madden on rookie. He just makes it look so easy. You got to get him the ball. If he's not getting open down the field, give him the ball behind the line of scrimmage. It really should never come to this. We shouldn't have to tell Kyle Shanahan, hey, remember Deebo Samuel? He's on your team. He's healthy. Now, they've put him on the injury list the last couple of times with a foot injury. I don't care. He's on the field. He's practicing in a limited basis. Give him the ball. The one time he got the screen, I think it was the late third or the early fourth, he broke about 5 tackles. He looked great. He got 15 yards. Come on. So it's got to be Deebo.
One other guy I think they should involve is whoever they're playing at tight end, whether that be they figure out more Charlie Werner stuff or they go Ross Dwelly and Jordan Reed. I'd like to go Reed, but Eric Ebron, outside of his 3 or 4 drops he had last week, he's always had drop problems, but he had 7 catches for I think 68 yards last week, dropped a touchdown. He was catching a lot of quick passes. Yeah, so I think get the tight end involved. That's one of Washington's weaknesses on defense. They've given up 2 touchdowns to Mark Andrews this year, who's obviously better than the Niners tight ends right now. And then the Rams had a good day against him. Dallas Goedert, I think, had 90 yards and 2 touchdowns against them in week 1. They got to get their tight ends involved.
There you go. Yeah. What I would do is first play of the game, shotgun, RPO with the fake run up the middle, pull it out, throw it to Debo for a screen. That's your first play. Establish Debo right off the bat. Let him smack someone. Second play, you could do, or early in the game, you could do the same thing for IU. You could do the same thing for Richie James. That should be the bread and butter, and you can build off that. What the Niners like to do is you got that run play built in. You can run off that up the middle. Or with Kyle Juszczyk, Ross Dwelly as those guys down the field blocking, the downfield blockers on the screen, they can slip the blocks, run upfield, and catch long passes. We've seen them do all these plays. This is like a whole concept that's packaged together that the Niners use plenty of times. It's there. If Kyle Shanahan is on his game, he'll use it. I just can't believe that he forgot about Debo last week. I don't think it'll happen again. I don't think it'll happen 2 times in a row. Especially not after this show, because Kyle's a big fan. Kyle, shout out to you. Good taste. All of you as well. That's all I got. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
The only thing I was going to say was that the 49ers should have a little bit of an advantage this week because of the scheduling, with Washington having to play on Monday night in Pittsburgh and then having to come now out here. I understand the Niners are stuck in Arizona, but the NFL would never schedule a road game following a Monday night game normally. So that should be something that should be a little bit of a break for the 49ers.
I didn't think of that at all. A road game after a Monday night game. That is hard. Yeah. That is what you would also almost call a scheduled loss. We might get, remember the Vikings in the playoffs? That version of the Vikings? We might it might be what it looks like. Or the Niners version of themselves in Seattle this year might be like that. Although I don't expect the Niners to win 35-6, but whatever. Yeah. That's a good call. I didn't know that. I don't really follow the rest of the NFL like I should. I'm just kidding. I do. I'm a great NFL analyst. Maverick, how you doing?
I see a lot of people wanting Wentz, and that's just the one quarterback I do not think the Niners should go after because, one, the cap hit, I don't know how Philly would get out of that. For one, he's $34 million on the cap next year. So this is if he's traded. $34 million, 59 dead, all that. It might change a little on the trade, but still, I don't think they're going to release him because that's a tough ask for ownership to accept, to release him and eat all that money. So I would go Wentz out of all the veterans they could trade for. It is my least optimal pick for the Niners. I'd much rather give up a little more for Stafford or Ryan or whoever rather than Wentz.
Well, if we're going to talk about Wentz real quick, I mean, the reason that Wentz is a topic to begin with is that he's, I think, much more attainable than Stafford. Again, I don't think Stafford's going anywhere.
But the cap hit.
But even if he were, the Niners, I don't think the Niners can get him. I don't think he's going anywhere. Wentz has been benched. I know it would be outrageous, the dead cap that they would have to take on to trade him. But what's even more outrageous is not trading him, keeping him on the bench and paying him the extra money. They would save something by getting rid of him. And if you know he's your backup and you prefer Jalen Hurts, then you got to get him the hell out of there. So I do think that the Eagles will try to trade him. But, I mean, he's got a 70 quarterback rating. He's gotten paid a lot of money. He's 28. He's had injuries. There's reports out of Philly that he's not listening to coaching, that he's aloof. I mean, it could work out. And if it doesn't, then you're in the position that the Eagles were in. So I don't know. What do you think, Jack? Are you excited about Carson Wentz? Is that a flyer you would want to take? It's an expensive flyer.
I don't really like Wentz because I don't like his throwing motion. I think that's part of where his issues are coming from. He's really extended and just that's his main problem is that he's just inconsistent with his accuracy so much. He's a good athlete. I just think that's where he loses me, especially at the price tag that it's going to cost to get him.
True.
The one thing on Wentz is I know he's been benched for good reason. He's been horrible this year, but I was listening to the Mina Kimes podcast, which I enjoy, and she was saying how it could be possibly that the offensive line this year for Philly is so bad, the weapons aren't there, that having Wentz out there, nothing good can happen. Throw Hurts out there, see what he can do, and then regroup next offseason, and then Wentz is still your starter. So the rest of this year, Wentz can't do anything to change anyone's mind, really at all. They have no offensive line, no receivers that are healthy. Next year, you get some new weapons, and then Wentz will be back. So I still think Wentz is their starter next year because, one, for the cap. Two, who knows who their head coach is, so him not listening to them might not even matter in the end.
I disagree, Maverick. All respect to you and Mina Kimes, but if they were really into Carson Wentz, they would have drafted they wouldn't have taken Jalen Hurts to begin with. I think it's pretty clear that there's a weird relationship between Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson. I don't know. I don't cover that team. I think it seems like there's a weird relationship there and they're moving on. You could be right. I don't cover that team, but it just seems like they took Jalen Hurts for a reason and they're not really sold on Carson. I don't know. What do you think, Jack?
Well, they got the Super Bowl without Wentz. They won the Super Bowl after he got hurt. So I think that could be part of it too.
That's right.
Is they're thinking, hey, we were able to do it without you. This offense works fine. It doesn't necessarily need you to be doing it, and you're the one that's messing it up. I agree with I agree with Mav and what Mina's saying in terms of the lack of skill position talent around them and the offensive line. I agree with that though as well.
Agree. Kevin Wang, if that is his real name, asks Grant, should we go for Dak Prescott? Worth discussing. What do you guys think? I have strong feelings about this.
I think Prescott's a very good player. Once again, we're all back in the same situation, and we talk about the cap. And one of the things is it's going to be interesting to see what happens because the cap is a product of the revenue. So and we don't know what that revenue is going to be. We're all basing our opinions really off of the worst case scenario. Maybe it's going to be a little bit better than we expect, and those numbers will be different. But still, I think Wentz is, let's move on to Prescott here. I think Prescott's a guy that's going to be looking at 20, somewhere in the $30 to $40 million range. That's really where he prices himself out.
I would personally, if Prescott was under, if he was willing to sign for under $38 million, I would hands down trade 2 first-round picks if that's what it would take to get him, because I think he is a very talented quarterback. I think he'd be great in Shanahan's system. I was a Dak hater when he was coming out of college because I was all in on that Mississippi State team before they laid an egg against Alabama when they were ranked number 1 for a second. And it took me a long time to get over that saltiness. But this year, before he got injured, I thought he was very good. I think he'll do even better away from Mike McCarthy. I would love to see him with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. But I just don't think Dallas is going to move on from him because I think that's the reason why a head coach like Eric Bieniemy or Lincoln Riley, whoever Dallas goes after, if they do fire Mike McCarthy, which I think they should, would want to go there because Dak Prescott's there.
Yeah. I just think Dak Prescott is entirely too freaking expensive. I really like Dak Prescott. I think he's a hell of a player. But if Matt Stafford at $20 million a year is a little too rich for my taste, then Dak Prescott at whatever he wants. What does he want? 40? He wants 40, right? That's his whole thing. He wouldn't settle for 35. He needs no, absolutely not. No freaking way. No, absolutely not. No, Kevin. You give it no. Absolutely not. Don't do that. I'm tired of I understand that quarterback is the most important position. It's the hardest position to play. And if you don't have one, but just throwing $1 billion at some guy who's B plus doesn't do it for me. Absolutely not. Kevin, if that is your real name, good question though. I think that's it. I think we gotten a little crazy. Kevin, I appreciate you. And I know it's your real name. I wasn't trying to say nothing. I just like saying that. Jack, good stuff. Maverick, solid. And the three of us, because, the Niners' problem is they're always talking about I. We are a team, and we're better than the sum of our parts. So go us. Hooray. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Take care.